Greetings, friends. Apologies for that. We had a bit of a technical blurb there. Now I think we've sorted it out. So I'm going to trigger the film again. Thank you. There's about 600, 700 people who've joined us already. Trust me, this is going to be worth it. So apparently I have to keep my face in here whilst we're premiering the film from our computer. So let's try it again.
Lucifer and his cult are seeded within the emergence of the very idea of time. Time itself demarcating the trial of separation, the separation of soul from the eternal principle of prior unity. As we bravely seek to retrieve the story of cosmogenesis, we are required to journey through the mind across a labyrinthine ocean of myth and of memory. It's a journey which requires that we suspend all fixed notions of reality, and more than that, prepare ourselves for a radical overhaul of our conceptual frameworks altogether. We are the Adamites, the galactic hybrid, seeded as the gift of the one God into the great void, that we might become the Jacob's ladder for all of creation existing within this temporal universe. And who would seek that ladder above all others but Lucifer himself, the highest of the angelics who fell from heaven's grace into the great abyss, the void, the cauldron of creation, the very pit of Sodom and Gomorrah, wherein the fellowship of man finds itself again in the year 2021, still captive within a raging orchestra of chaos moving through our world. Living souls converted into dead fictions through the spells and the bonds of ages, enslaved to the tyranny of invisible masters and constrained within an unimaginable apparatus of what we can only describe as evil. The churches and the governments, the institutions and the corporations, dead things representing dead systems, standing over all the living souls, parasiting off the life force, the time and the motion of God's creatures. Fractured by socioeconomic divides, cultural and religious division, moralistic and spiritual chasms. And through this dystopia, we emerge as a common species, defined in essence by our desperate search for relevancy, for redemption, and for salvation. This is the hero's journey. It is a story of how the beast of the sea made its way onto dry shore to emerge as the beast of the land. Where admiralty and maritime law, the law of piracy, usurped and commandeered the natural law, God's own law. It is the story of how the soul covenant was breached, how humankind offered itself up for harvest and granted permission for the infiltration every step of the way. For it is the story of you and I. It is the story of how we arrived at the status quo and how we now choose to define a reclamation of our lives, our souls, and our precious planet. In the end, it is the story of how we find our way back home. Thousands of years ago, under the thrall of archonic influence, the Brotherhood of the Snake and the Sons of Belial, wrong action and wickedness emerged as a rudimentary source code to the current seeding of humankind. As Baal worship and human sacrifice prospers, we see the genesis of Canaanite ritualism leading through the strains of Osiris and Nimrod to the pharaohs of Egypt and the kings of Babylon. Talmudism gave rise to Judeans and the synagogue of Satan as the tryst of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar seeded within the Roman Empire a marriage between Amun-Ra and the cult of Saturn. The weaponization of Christianity through the Council of Nicaea take place in 325 AD. Wholesale slaughter of the noble Cathars give rise to the Roman Catholic Church. True cross is upturned, and the message of Yeshua inverted to create the most formidable template for planetary cult programming ever conceived in the history of mankind. The Vatican, a complex born out of Sol Invictus and Hellenization, emerges as the ultimate Leviathan which will cleave its way throughout history for the next 1,700 years, right up to the present day. 1066 and the onset of Doomsday demarcates the bloodied line between the living and the dead, where all living souls and living soil itself is registered and tabulated, converted into bonds and deeds. The church and the state were never separated. Acting as the proxies of Cronus, they began forging and consolidating Lucifer's empire, using the souls of the living along with all tithes, penalties, and taxes as the true collateral behind the global economic and financial complex. The Judean lineage, in compact with the Vatican, steers its course through the Middle Ages to become the Khazarian Empire, commandeering the good Jewish faith and seeding crypto-Judaism as Vatican crusades and Roman legions give birth to the Knights Templar, masquerading as poor knights of Christ. Papal states and the rise of Islam occur concurrent to the emergence of Kabbalah, subverting natural law and God's law into canon and Sharia law. The weaponization of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is locked and loaded. Through the Khazarian court Jews and the pontifical guard of the Templars, assured through the enforcement of Sharia and canon law, the black nobility take their throne in Switzerland in the year 1291. Laying claim as the Merovingians, they begin their conquest of people and planet through inquisitions and the rise of the Venetians. Trade and commerce become the new weapons of hegemony and dominion, of conquest and the desecration of the living men and women of the living soil. The papal bulls and doctrine of discovery are promulgated by European monarchies in order to legitimize the illicit colonization of all the lands of the world. This takes place between the mid-15th and 20th centuries, allowing the imperial hegemony of the crowns of Europe to seize the lands and massacre billions of black-skinned, brown-skinned, yellow-skinned, and red-skinned brothers and sisters in what is assuredly the gravest abomination in our human history. A mass sacrifice of innocence and a desecration of the songs of ancestry follows, which will echo through the end of time. The Society of Jesus, through the Jesuitical order at the Council of Trent in 1534, perverts Christianity into the atom seed of what will become the modern deep state. The assassins are born. The inverted message of Yeshua has become a clarion call for a planetary orchestration of blood sport, subversion, infiltration, deception, and the sacrifice of innocence. The Bank of England and Dutch East India interests thus forged their way through trade and commerce, usury and exploitation, to the emergence of the Masons in 1717, with the formation of a united Grand Lodge, the true birth of Luciferianism in the temporal domain. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 seeds the formation of the United Kingdom and the Rothschild dynasty, both empowered through the Jesuitical suppressions in concert with the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, to catalyze the formation of a barbarian Illuminati in 1776 under the leadership of one Adam Weishaupt, a damnable soul who can indeed lay claim as the patron saint of the modern Bilderbergs. This very same year saw the birth of Masonic Atlantis, The United States of America, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new order of the ages, glorified and immortalized on the Great Seal of the United States. The human experiment is fully underway. The Napoleonic Wars between 1803 and 1815 paved the way for a consolidation of the Vatican City and City of London in 1871, giving spark to a culminating element of a trifecta of evil empire, Washington, District of Columbia, in 1871. With this spark emerges the flame of worldwide destructivity that is the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913. A fateful day on which the soul of humanity was put to the pyre of Moloch. The prime target became the living soul of that great human experiment, America, and by extension, all the peoples of the world. Forced into usury, debt, scarcity economics, and systemic corruptibility of all governments and their institutions. Every government on earth is thus owned by and indentured to their National Reserve Bank, which in turn is owned by and indentured to the central banking cartel, consolidated through the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, the IMF, IFC, World Bank, Bank of England, and ultimately the Vatican Bank. This Molochite Sabbatean cabal is answerable not to God of men, but to their own dark lord, to whom penance, tribute, and tithe must be constantly made on the altar of life through blood sacrament, sex magic, and the inversion of kundalini and life force, ultimately through the systemic stealth sacrifice of innocence. Our religious, political, and academic, military, and corporate and media leadership are cast adrift within the thrall and compromise of these dynastic, Sabbatean, satanic, and Luciferian elements and their godless agendas. A Faustian pact is offered to all comers and invariably taken before the sin is even realized. Sexual blackmail is rife. Global depopulation become the needful and perfunctory necessity toward realizing transhumanization of the mortal realm. That is because the grand enterprise of Luciferic Satanism has been to prepare our species for full spectrum intervention and take over at the oversoul level. Universal law determines that this can only occur where permissions are granted by the subject. The Adamites, the sons and daughters of God, the spells and bonds of witchery and mind control trick humanity into surrendering conscience, reason, and thereby the very fabric of our soul. This is the great reckoning. The mark of the beast has arrived, ushered into the daylight by Davos and the sons of Lucifer. It offers us our greatest gift, which is the perfect reflection of all the unresolved aspects of self. Do we take the mark or do we not? Do we obey or do we not? Do we acquiesce or do we not? Do we permit the surgical steel of a needlepoint to breach the sovereign skin of our noble Adamite flesh, or do we not? By the grace of God, we get to decide.
Hello, hello, hello. And thank you all for joining us. See, we've got 1,500 people online with us, and I am delighted to be introducing some very good friends tonight. Let me first welcome, boom. How you doing, guys? Alejandro and Elena, nice to see you.
Amazing, nice to see you. What a beautiful film. I had chills all over my body. It was just incredible. Thank you, Sacha.
Well, this is a re-edit, and I just threw in a number of the monuments and sacred sites that we're actually going to be talking about tonight, because it's just to contextualize it. But thank you for that. I think Sovereign will put the link of the film, an access link in the chat for people. So if you want to access it, you can do. And I was about to introduce our special guest, but I can say he's in the green room. I can see he's in the green room. Let me welcome the one and the only Michael Tellinger. How are you, sir? Michael, we can't hear you.
Unmute the magical button.
Very
so good
good
to see you, brother. And what a beautiful film you put together there. You have such an incredible command of the English language. It's just so beautiful to listen to you, and the beautiful images that were put together. It sent shivers up my spine. A perfect preamble to the solutions that I talk about often. So I'm going to leave it up to you to take that further.
Very good. So, Michael, you're looking fantastic incidentally. I don't know what you're on, but I want some of that stuff, please. And I want to introduce you, Michael. Carry on.
I beg your pardon?
No, I want to introduce you to Alejandro and to Elena, our maestros.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
Hello, Helena and Alejandro. Good to meet you guys.
Likewise.
So, Michael, I'm not sure if you followed any of the shows we've been doing on the soul frequency readings, but this is scalar stuff. And Alejandro and Elena, Michael is one of my dearest and dare I say it, oldest friends. And he's got his head around Vanguard science. So there's nothing that's sort of out there for Michael. But I'd be particularly grateful if you just treat Michael as the layman and give him just a little background to the scalar science that we're deploying. And then we're going to kick the show off imminently.
Wonderful. Yes. So, Michael, we've been reading frequencies of public, private figures, historical monuments, any kind of information that you want to retrieve. What we've recognized over the last 3 years is everything is available in the human biofield, the human morphogenetic field. Past, present, and future all exist in the moment. So we were able to retrieve this information. And of course, through many, many readings that we've done with Sacha publicly in our private community, we've been able to navigate this reality in a very clear way.
Michael, any questions?
Look, I find it fascinating, the fact that you can read the energies and the frequencies of individuals, and especially public figures. Obviously, I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I would love to see some more detailed information on this, because with that kind of information, you and anyone that works with you can put together an incredible arsenal of remedies and antidotes for any negative attacks on humanity. And I also have some friends here in South Africa that have got the capacity to find frequencies that are being, I guess, aimed at humanity, and follow them back to its source and its origins. And so this is fantastic. The fact that you're doing it is beautiful. This is all technology and information that needs to be made available as a tool for people, for good people and communities all over the world, as a tool for all kinds of activities, a tool for self-defense, a tool for healing, a tool for recognition and identification of where the onslaughts against us are coming from, and then being able to neutralize it and possibly even send it back to destroy the source with dissonant, resonant, or dissonant frequency, because that's how simple things really are. Everything is frequency, so I love it, and I look forward to learning more about what you're doing.
Yes.
Well, you're definitely speaking our language when you say that frequency is everything, right, Alejandro, Elena?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Everything is energy and everything is frequency. And one thing that we've recognized in doing thousands of readings is frequency cannot be manipulated. And as Sacha knows, oftentimes, just like this time for today's show, he gave us a list of different monuments and historic places that he wanted revealed. Of course, we read the frequencies. We're not attached to any of the stories, and we cannot wait to hear what, of course, Sacha has to share, and you as well, since it's your area of expertise.
Indeed, Michael, and this is the thing, we're really keen on your kind of running commentary along with our sort of layman commentary on sacred sites and ancient monuments and what have you. And just to, we'll actually start now. We may as well. I'm not quite sure how these slides are going to work, folks, so please bear with our little production studio here, because the slides that come up are going to look like this. Boom, that's Tower of Babel. Okay, that's more or less workable. So Tower of Babel does not appear in the Bible. It's always the city and the tower. The original derivation of the name Babel, also the Hebrew name for Babylon, is uncertain, but according to the Bible, the city received the name Babel from the Hebrew verb balal, meaning to jumble up or to confuse. In the biblical introduction to the Tower of Babel, the account in Genesis, it said that everyone on earth spoke the same language, but this is inconsistent with the biblical description of the post-Noahic world described in Genesis, where it said that the descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth gave rise to different nations, each with their own language. Listen, biblical scholars out there, don't even think about commenting here, because everyone's going to have a different idea. We just snatch and grab basic information. This is layman stuff. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Well, doesn't that perfectly describe the world we've arrived at today, where doctors speak doctorese, lawyers speak legalese, plumbers speak plumberies, pastry chefs speak pastry chefies. No one understands the whole context of things. We've become so goddamn clever and specialized that we don't actually speak to one another as a peoples. We've lost touch. The more we move toward creating this new Babylon 2.0 model of reality, which is the cityscape, the new world order, central command and control, United Nations, central banking, consolidation of power and dominion. The more we played that fucked up civilizational game, bringing us to this point now, we've got to that point where we don't hear each other. We can't speak to each other. We have to have lawyers and bookkeepers and accountants and translators and insurers every step of the way, because we don't trust one another, because we don't understand one another. So that's why I thought that Babel and the Tower of Babel was probably the single most important one that we could start with. So over to you guys, the numbers.
Yes, of course. So the Tower of Babel, we had one reading on it, and it's a frequency of 700, of course, based on a scale of 0 to 1,000, 1,000 being a fully integrated experience on this planet. So 700 is the frequency of enlightenment. So it actually represents the Tower of Babel, that it was an enlightened type of beings that lived at that time. So it made sense on some of the things that you just mentioned, that people spoke the same language, that people understood each other. Mm-hmm. Very right. Different frequency than where we are as humanity today.
Indeed. Michael, any comments? Michael, are you with us? I think we've lost Michael there. Okay. I'm not hearing Michael. I don't think he's hearing us. Let's move on to the next one, which is Stonehenge, a prehistoric monument. You'd have to be brain dead not to know about Stonehenge. Prehistoric monument in Wiltshire, England, consisting of an outer ring of vertical sarsen standing stones. Inside is a ring of smaller blue stones, and inside these are freestanding trilithons. Now, archaeologists believe it was constructed from 3,000 to 2000 BC, before Christ. That's what, 4,000 years ago, 4 to 5,000 years ago. In July 2020, a study led by David Nash concluded that the large sarsen stones were a direct chemical match to those found at some 15 miles north of Stonehenge. It's also been suggested that the stones from other sources may have been added to Stonehenge over the years, perhaps from other dismantled circles in the region. Michael, are you with us again? Can you hear us now?
I can hear you. See, can you see me and hear me?
We were speaking to you a while ago. We put you on screen, but apparently you weren't hearing us or seeing us. But no worries. I was trying to get your commentary on the Tower of Babel, if you had any comment on there. But we've touched now on Stonehenge, and I'm just going to get the readings from Alejandro and Elena.
Yes, the current vibrational frequency is 110, which is the level of fear. But in 3000 BC, it was 700 actually. So that's the what the Enlightenment process.
Okay, so that's plummeted from 700 frequency, which is the frequency of, that's when you tip into the Enlightenment spectrum, right?
Exactly.
What could have caused a failure in frequency so drastic over the years?
The only thing I can come up with at the moment is what you just mentioned. There were some stones placed afterwards that they could have been disrupting the frequency of the other stones. Somewhat is changing the whole frequency, right?
Right. Michael, anything you know about Stonehenge that you could speak to?
Well, the thing I want to just lay out first is that people need to realize that all these ancient sites, it doesn't matter which site you go to, from Stonehenge to the pyramids, to Adam's calendar, to Borobudur, to Sacsayhuaman, to the temples in Egypt, to the temples in Iran, all these ancient sites are energy generating devices. The big question is, what were they generating energy for? What was it used for? Because these were machines on a gigantic scale. I'm sure you've seen some of my lectures where I actually show that these temples are actually giant silicon chip circuit boards, right? So,
100%, yeah. And that to me was one of the most amazing things that you've ever brought into the public realm, was understanding that these are ancient artifacts, many of them, and you could possibly explain which ones are and which ones aren't. But maybe the frequencies will also tell us.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. So these are machines. These were not built as dwellings for people or worshipping places or anything like that. They were machines. Churches and cathedrals are then new versions of these ancient machines where people then were used to generate the energy inside these, where people are ushered in as cattle. And you can see that in some of the temples around the world, where they have the amphitheaters built alongside these temples, which are the giant circuit boards. And the amphitheaters act as the starting or the initiation starter. It's like a starting device on a car. You know, you get people in there into the perfectly created amphitheater. It's connected to the circuit board with these beautiful a row of vibrating pillars that carries the vibrational frequency into the circuit board. And you can look at all these ancient sites from the Parthenon in Greece to everywhere you look. There's some beautiful examples in Africa, in Algeria, where sometimes the amphitheater is right in the middle of the circuit board. So the technology went from using the earth as a resonator and generating the frequency by amplifying the frequency of Mother Earth itself, the Schumann frequencies and all the other so-called resonances and frequencies that we've identified over the years, and then amplifying those, and then using the sound of the earth as the source code for generating energy. The stone circles in South Africa are the greatest example of that on earth, of, should I say, Southern Africa, because it's South Africa, Zimbabwe, and many of the surrounding countries. Yeah,
we're going to get to those shortly. Thank you for that. Thanks very much for that, Michael. Okay, next we're going to move on to Borobudur, my part of the world, Indonesia. It is a 9th century Mahayana Buddhist temple. It is decorated with 2,672 relief panels and 504 Buddha statues. It's the largest Buddhist temple in the world, and was abandoned following the 14th century decline of the Hindu kingdoms in Java and the Javanese conversion to Islam. There are no known records of construction or the intended purpose of Borobudur. It lay hidden for centuries under layers of volcanic ash, and jungle growth. And the monument was not forgotten, rather like the Bosnian pyramid. And the monument was not forgotten completely, though folk stories gradually shifted from its past glory into more superstitious beliefs associating it with bad luck and misery. I've spent a fair bit of time exploring the place myself, and because it's my show, I'm able to show a photograph. There you go. There the handsome hair with, yeah, and that was from the top of there. I mean, the most incredible vista when you're at the top of this extraordinary pyramid. Nonetheless, let's jump back to the slide there and get the frequency analysis by our maestros.
Yes, the overall frequency of the Borobudur is 225, which is the frequency of courage. And then we measured it during the year of 750 AD, and the frequency was the same, 225, courage.
Wow. So what does that tell us as it relates to an ancient monument, in your view?
Perhaps it's meant for people. We always say that 200 is the gateway of courage for humanity to walk through and recognize that we're all connected. And it's a very powerful frequency of recognition, of connectedness to oneself and to the collective. So in
That's
a way, yes.
Yeah, no, that's helpful to hear that. Michael, any comments from you before we move?
Look, Borobudur is a remarkable place, and I'm jealous that you've been there, because it's one place that I definitely would like to go and see before I leave this domain. And I have no idea what it is. It's absolutely baffled me. The design, the amount of effort and attention to detail that went into building that place clearly tells me it was built with passion and not with other intentions. That's right. What it feels like to me.
Right.
And it's got a very different feeling to a lot of the temples in Egypt, for example, or some of the Persian temples that look literally are just like giant circuit boards. This is a very different thing.
Very interesting. Thank you. Okay, good. Let's move on to our next one, which is, and this is really important place for me. I lived in Egypt for about 3 years. And I have to say that one of the most extraordinary places in the world for me is the Saqqara pyramid. Now, Saqqara contains numerous pyramids, including the world-famous step pyramid of Djoser, the oldest complete stone building complex known in history during the 3rd dynasty. It is a vast and ancient burial ground serving as the necropolis of the ancient Egyptians' capital, Memphis. Well, I personally question the hell out of that. I don't buy that for 1 second. I've been to that place. I've spent time at that pyramid. That is not the pyramid that I went into and did my little overnight shamanic ritual, which I think I spoke about. I've got some slides here. Which I did at the Great Pyramids in Egypt. There I am back in the day. And I spent an awful lot of time there, This was one occasion here where I'd been hijacked in the desert by some gunshot, AK-47 or similar wielding weirdos who hijacked us in the middle of the desert. And we were just coming back. I think that was coming back from that or going into that particular expedition. Not a lot of fun. I can tell you it was bloody terrifying. And last image I want to show is that there's my camel. Oh, yes, my beloved camel. So Saqqara pyramid, the reason why I want to discuss this, I felt something extraordinary there. And Alejandro and Elena, you'd never even heard of it, I don't think, until I sent through and just said, can you run the frequencies on this? Mm-hmm. So for me, when you come back and say that it's got the frequencies you're about to disclose, for me, I'm not that surprised, but tell us what you think this means.
Yes, currently vibrates at the frequency of 400, which is the level of reason, intellect. We measured it all the way back to the 27th century BC, and it was at 1,000. Yeah, and
which is Avatar. That's pure Yeshua.
It's the fully integrated experience, right, for the human experience. And I would say that somewhat I feel that it has to do also to when it was established or created. There was in relation to the the civilization that existed at that time, and their vibrational frequency as well. Like, and I know that this is not part of the show, is going into the ancient civilizations and so forth, but we have measured them, and that's what came to mind. That somewhat now currently is being also at this frequency in order to support what one is experiencing now.
Right.
Yes.
Fascinating. Well, I have a bit of a confession to make, which I may as well make today, get it off my chest to cleanse my karmic load. I did steal a piece of pottery from the Saqqara pyramid. I got in there on a diplomatic pass and through with a diplomatic car, because there was military around there. No one was allowed to anywhere near that pyramid. I don't know. I think nowadays maybe you can get there on special dispensation, but I got in with a diplomatic car with an ambassador, and I won't name her to embarrass her. God bless her. She got me in there, and I did find a little piece of pottery, which was a little ceramic altar piece that the crocodile fat, or the oil of the crocodile, was put into as they held that flaming thing up to the ultravitus or whatever. And I put it in my pocket. And because I was with an ambassador, they couldn't do any searches with me. And I've still got that to this day. But the reason I'm saying this is because, A, I'd like to apologize to the Ministry of Antiquities for stealing. But secondly, I'd like to invite you guys to do a reading, scalar frequency reading on that ceramic. I'll get that. It's in England right now. But I thought that was interesting. Michael, any comments on ancient Egypt as it relates to the pyramids?
Yeah. Am I there? Can you see me? Am I
We
back?
can. Yes, we
Okay.
can see you.
So Egypt is obviously critical to where I am, because I'm exactly south of Egypt, because most of the Egyptian activity runs along the Nile. And when you look at the other two prominent sites in Africa, and that would be Great Zimbabwe and Adam's Calendar, which is exactly south of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So the connection between what went on in Egypt and what went on in Southern Africa is inextricably connected. This is not an accident. So somehow in ancient times and antiquities, a long, long time ago, we're not talking a few thousand years, we're talking a few 100,000 years. And I can go into a lot of detail why I can say so with such absolute confidence. And if you have time for it, I'll explain to you why. Because just more than a year ago, I found the absolute smoking gun that shows us unquestionably the evidence. We're talking about 300,000 years or more for these structures that were constructed here. And since the South African structures are that old, the Egyptian structures are directly connected to it. So whatever is going up in north was going down here in south. Whichever came first remains a big question. Maybe they happened at the same time and were managed at the same time, but it's a spectacular site. And there's a beautiful example, and I've just been racking my brain to bloody come up with the name. I've got a complete blank on the name of this pyramid, and it's, I believe it's south of the Giza pyramids. That's where you find the alabaster, the platform with the alabaster platform with those hollowed out bowls. I forget the name of that site now. It completely escapes me. But that entire site with a pyramid, which is broken down quite badly, is built on this perfect platform, the same platform that the Egyptian temples and these circuit boards are built on in ancient times. And this one is identical to that as well. You can see it's built on this perfect platform. It's actually even got a surrounding wall. Then you've got this pyramid, which is probably the energy generating device for that site. And right in front of it, the pyramid, which was probably surrounded by the hollowed out stone, hollowed out balls that had water flowing through them. You have this platform that looks like a beam me up Scotty platform. It still looks like it today. It's absolutely spectacular.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Thank you, Michael. Abu Simbel, still staying with Egypt. Abu Simbel temples. Did you want to say something else?
Abu Ghraib, that's what it's called. You just reminded me. It's called Abu Ghraib.
Got it. Okay. Abu Simbel temples are two massive rock-cut temples. The complex relocated in entirety in 1968. So that I wonder if that's affected the frequency, if the whole thing was relocated. The relocation of the temples was necessary, or they would have been submerged during the creation of the Lake Nasser. Great. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, let's just do your diagnostic on those readings, would you?
Yes, the overall frequency as of today for Abu symbol is 400, which is the frequency of reason. And then we measured the frequency of Abu symbol between the year of 1244 and 1224 BCE, and it was a frequency of 500, which is the frequency of love.
Wow. Okay, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So
used, right, to generate and send out certain frequencies. And I'm sure somehow, perhaps Michael would be able to put all these puzzle pieces together by understanding how, based on the frequencies and the dates that we've measured, the signals were connected, right, or the frequencies were connected.
So, whilst we carry on, Alejandro.
I feel that in a way that without a doubt, strategically placed, in different areas to support what the people are experiencing or at the time, and then in order to find a balance or create balance or keep the balance,
Yeah. Very interesting. And I'm just curious that, Tower of Babel was 700. Michael, when was the Tower of Babel? When would you, as an archaeohistorian and cosmologist, when would you place the Tower of Babel, more or less? We're not hearing you, Michael.
Hold on. Sorry, I was being kind and muted myself. So the Tower of Babel is a critically important part of human history, and I was really keen to jump in earlier when you first brought it up, because it is such an important moment in human history that actually triggers what I believe to be many other moments like that throughout all of human history. It go back probably many thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. And if you look at the structure of the Tower of Babel, whether it's an accurate structure or not, it was a tower. It was either a dome or a cone or a pyramidal structure. Who knows what it looked like at this stage? But it was obviously structured in a way to push energy into the sky. And this is what you find with many of these ancient sites. The temples in Egypt have obelisks that were giant antennas, and also to either push energy into the sky and also receive energy. So they're conductors and they're receivers and they're transmitters. You have the churches, you have the pyramids, obviously, that are huge energy generating devices. But the Tower of Babel is important. And what you said earlier was absolutely spot on, because it says that everybody spoke one language. It's absolutely nonsense. By the time the Tower of Babel was built, there were hundreds of languages being spoken around the world, if not thousands already at that time. So the problem was, I think, that we misunderstood and misinterpret what that event actually means. And I suspect this is what I currently have a notion to lean towards. I can't say with absolute knowing that this was the case, but it seems to me that because of our DNA's capacity to regenerate itself and to reactivate the dormant parts of our DNA and become more connected to the morphogenetic field and become more connected to each other and reactivating our pineal gland and being able to communicate telepathically and being able to do things that the gods were able to do, to cast spells and do magic, so we can bring our thoughts into reality and manifest things. I think that was the problem here. And I think that probably happened a few times when humanity reached a level of consciousness where they realized that they were gods. They were one with the field of consciousness of all of creation, and they could create and co-create and manifest their own realities and manifest anything. And it was that frequency that needed to be broken. So we have to let us go down and break their language, or destroy their language, because if they can do this, they can become like us. That's what the Sumerian tablets tell us, which is identical to very much the same as we read in the Bible. So the Tower of Babel for me is a I believe a repetitive cycle, and we're going through it right now. They're culling humanity. Absolutely. They're culling humanity right now because we're reaching very, very high levels of consciousness, and some individuals around the world have become masters of manifestation. And we're doing it right here, right now. The more meetings like this we have, the more we manifest a beautiful future for all of humanity.
But this is the thing. This is why I'm interested. And this is why I raised the point, because, I'm if this culling, this cyclical situation of humanity being corralled into kind of mass sacrificial, exercises and so on, I'm trying to triangulate and find out, well, where are the genesis points in history? And if you go back to Tower of Babel, which I would have personally have thought that would have had a really rank frequency, I can't understand why it doesn't have the same, frequency as, Anthony Fauci. I can't understand that. Why would it have but what you've just said, the context makes a great deal of sense. Anyway, let's continue, because that's exactly what we're unfurling here. Next one is Uluru. Debbie, your computer, thank you. Uluru, everyone knows that, sandstone rock formation in the southern part of Northern Territory in Australia, sacred to the Aboriginal people of the area known as Anangu. And the rock was originally sand deposited as part of the extensive alluvial fan that extended out from the ancestors of the Musgrave, Man and Peterman ranges. I'm not so sure about that. My understanding was that it was an asteroid that impacted the Earth. Michael, before we bring Elena in and Alejandro, very briefly, what do you know of Ayers Rock?
Okay, Ayers Rock, Uluru, whatever the most recent name is that people are giving it, is one of the great power points on Earth, and there's a very specific reason for that. And then now, for this reason, we need to get into the slightly bizarre part of human history, and that is the fact that there used to be giants on Earth. There's this huge push by mainstream academia and all the mainstream academic institutions that are trying to remove the story of giants from our past. It's just, nonsense. It's nonsensical. It's impossible for giants to exist. They give you all kinds of non-scientific, scientific arguments that it's not possible, when it's very clear. All ancient texts, all ancient oral traditions tell us about the giants. And when we talk about the giants, we're not just talking about guys that are like, 12 feet or 20 feet tall. We're talking about guys that are a mile high. In the book of Enoch, Enoch clearly tells us that the giants were 3,000 ells tall. And that is close to a mile. If an ell is from your fingertips to your elbow, that's about half a meter. So we're talking about a 1.5 kilometer tall giants. And then all ancient cultures talk about the giants. Africa is full of it. The Americas are full of it. Europe is full of it. I suspect, first of all, my research here, and you asked for a brief answer. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to give a bit of context to explain why I reach certain conclusions. Otherwise, you come across crazy. So I've learned more about geology in the last 3 years than any geologist will ever learn at university or in a postgraduate situation, by simply studying the rocks and the geological formations around the stone circles and the fossils that I've discovered that are just absolutely ridiculous. Actual fossilized body parts of giants that were 70 and 100 meters tall, some of them 300 meters tall, that I have right here around me, covering the mountains around Waterval-Boven. So I first want to say, push aside any notion or belief that you might have of what the history of the world looks like. Cast it aside, because it will change the way geology formed. The moment you are prepared to accept new information and new knowledge, you will then also realize that the geological formations around us can happen very, very differently from the way it's described in the modern sciences today.
Yeah.
And it's all to do with frequency and resonance. And I suspect that Uluru, and the reason why it's a very powerful site, is because it may be the remains of a very large being that once lived and covered the earth, that fell and became part of the landscape. We see that all over the world, and that's just a suggestion. I'm not saying that's what it is, but everything's that it might be that.
Well, you know what? I think Alejandro and Elena might be able to deploy their remarkable scientific technology for truthing against these various ideas. So does that make sense? I mean, should we get some of these ideas, some of these giants? Michael is one of the world's most respected archaeocosmologists and archaeologists in this domain. So why don't we do out of place artifacts and anomalous notions like the Tartarians and all the rest of it, and you can deploy the scalar to that. We've done this recently with aliens and star seeds, Michael, just so you know. And alas, alack, hate to break it to you, but the blue avians don't actually exist. Anyway, let's get on with the monument. Ayers Rock, Uluru. Just do your reading there kindly, Elena.
Yeah, so the overall frequency is 700, actually very much in alignment with what Michael just shared, the frequency of enlightenment. So it's a frequency of an enlightened, possibly, being based on some of your conclusions. So I believe it would be
fascinating. First, people, you heard it here first. Thank you, Michael. That was a beautiful piece. Love it.
Yes. I think it would be fascinating. Go ahead.
If I may add, and part of the desperate attempt by mainstream academia and the authorities, Smithsonian is probably the leading culprit there, to remove giants from our history and our consciousness, is because and then they keep telling stories, and you hear it in many of the fairy tales or some of the fairy tales that are propaganda fairy tales, that the giants were evil, the giants were man-eating, the giants were this, the giants were that. That is not the experience that I have from my shamanic connections with these giants, not just with one or two shamans, with a number of shamans and people that have special abilities to be able to connect with the spirits of the ancestors and the guardians of these ancient sites and so forth. And what I discovered is that most of these giants were actually benevolent. They were beautiful. They were like children. They were among the first beings of higher consciousness that lived the earth, that walked the earth, that shaped the earth, that shaped the mountains, shaped the valleys, allowed the rivers and the waters to flow. So they were like beautiful children, just one with the earth, one with the creation consciousness of the earth, that were able to shape this. And then they started to scale down and became smaller and smaller from the original giants that may have been the ones that originally shaped the earth, which is really spectacular story that we can go into in different discussions into that. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so before we move on, two things come to mind with me. Alejandro and Elena, is it possible that we could do number readings on the Smithsonian Institute, the Vatican Library, and the British Museum? I think those are arguably the three that have institutions that have probably inhibited real understanding. And would you agree with that, Michael, more or less, those three?
Yeah. One would also want to do a reading on, for example, the Baghdad Museum and the museum in Jordan and Syria, because there's some very big, very important museums there.
Very interesting. Okay. Very good. Well, someone's asking on the commentary thread, why is there not applicable? Why are we having NA non-applicable for the Genesis frequency? Why would you put?
Well, we didn't know at what stage to measure Ulurakan, how many thousands of years ago. So we just measured at where it is today. But of course, if Michael will give us an insight of when would be another great point to measure, then we could.
Yes.
Oh, Michael, do you want to do that now? Give a date line that you would like to see read as it relates to Uluru.
Oh my God, you're talking millions. You're talking a few million years. Maybe hundreds of millions. Maybe hundreds of millions. It's really difficult to say.
200 million? 200 million? Should we try it on that first?
Yeah, this is where the other big thing comes in, is that all the dates that we have about certain events in human history that is based on archaeological, paleontological, geological, strata discoveries and so forth. Once you realize that a geological formation of an entire mountain can form within days and weeks, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it can take millions of years to get here. It could all of the geological formations that we see around us could have happened in a matter of weeks, because petrification, fossilization can happen in an instant. And once you start researching this and you realize that we've been lied to and led down a path of deception about all of this stuff, it changes the way you look at geology and mountains around you, and it scrambles the timelines, man. This is what happened to me with my discoveries here. When I discovered the fossilized petrified body parts among the stone circle ruins, it just threw everything out of the window.
Yeah. No, I recall that. Well, you're not too far from controversy with the work you've been doing for a long time. Washington Monument. Next one we're looking at. Construction began in 1848, halted for a period of 23 years from 1854 to 1877 because of lack of funds, blah, blah, blah. It's a hollow Egyptian-style stone obelisk. Hollow stone obelisk with a 500-foot, 152.4 meters tall column surmounted by a 55-foot tall pyramidion, 16.8 meter tall pyramidion. The marble pyramidion has thin walls only 7 inches thick, and the top of the pyramidion is a large marble capstone with a small aluminium pyramid at its apex with inscriptions on all 4 sides. Very interesting to know that it's aluminium tip capstone. I didn't know that. But what do you make of the rather dastardly soul frequency readings there?
Mm-hmm. The overall frequency is 110, which is the level of fear. And we measured it in 1848, and it was also 110, the level of fear. Like I said, I feel that most of them were strategically placed. In this case, the intention was definitely related to fear, right?
Right, and which makes absolute sense. I mean, and we're going to find that with a number of these other monuments. We can double back in a moment for comments, but let's just move on to Angkor Wat, Cambodia, the temple built by Khmer King, unpronounceable name, not going to bother, in the early 12th century, designed to represent Mount Meru, home of the Devas or Devas in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, lying within a moat more than 5 kilometers long. Angkor Wat is a prime example of the classical style of Khmer architecture. By the 12th century, the architects had become skilled and confident in the use of sandstone. And virtually all of its surface column, lintels, and even roofs are carved. There are miles of reliefs illustrating scenes from Indian literature, including unicorns, which we should do the frequency readings on, griffin, winged dragons pulling chariots, as well as warriors following an elephant-mounted leader, and celestial dancing girls with elaborate hairstyles. Wow. Okay, what do you make of that?
Yes. So the overall frequency today of Angkor Wat is 400, frequency of reason. In the 12th century, the frequency of Angkor Wat was 600, frequency of peace.
Okay, interesting. Well, whilst you're there, let's move on to another popular one, the Taj Mahal, India, commissioned by Shah Jahan in 1631, built in the memory of his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died in June that year whilst giving birth to their 14th child. I wonder if that's got something to do with the reading. The 14th child dying, the wife dying, giving birth to the 14th child. Construction started 1632, completed 1648, while the surrounding building and gardens were finished years later. The imperial court documenting Shah Jahan's grief after the death of his wife illustrates the love story held as the inspiration for the Taj Mahal. It expands on design traditions of Indo-Islamic and earlier Mughal architecture. So Muslim tradition forbids elaborate decoration of graves. Hence, the bodies of Mumtaz and the Shah Jahan, her husband, were put in a relatively plain crypt beneath the inner chamber with their faces turned right towards Mecca. A sad story.
Yes, Taj Mahal's vibrational frequency is 175, which is the level of pride. And in 1631 was also 175 when it was built.
Are we to read in that it was not a love story, that was some tourist bullshit concocted after the fact, that it was all about hubris and ego and glory?
It would be interesting to read the ruler who built, who had this commissioned, to give deeper insight into it.
Maybe we can revisit that, because I think we'll definitely be moving into part 2 and probably part 3 of the monuments and sacred sites, because there's just so much. And the more, as you know, the more we did in the last week is, oh God, Easter Island, or what, you keep coming up with more. And, you know, we haven't even consulted the guru, Michael Tellinger, which we're going to do in the green room after this show and get his ideas. So let's move on to Parthenon, ancient Greece. 447 BC, forgive me, about 2,500 years old. A former temple on the Athenian Acropolis, dedicated to Athena, the goddess whom the people of Athens considered their patron. Began 447 BC, when the Athenian Empire was at the peak of power. Completed in 438 BC, although decoration of the building continued until 432. It's the most important surviving building of classical Greece, generally considered the zenith of the Doric order. Well, being a trained architect, I can tell you Doric is one of the many orders. You've got Corinthian and Ionic and others, but indeed the Parthenon is exquisite. I've been there, spent time there, and it is quite remarkable. What do you make of the readings?
Yes, its overall vibrational frequency is 225, which is the level of courage. And in 447 BC was 400, the level of reason, intellect.
How do you move from intellect to courage? Courage in as much as they managed to reassemble it from the dirt, a courageous excavation undertaking, possibly. Speak to the archaeologist. We could speak to that. What would this? I'm asking you. What would explain that discrepancy in number from intellect to?
Yes, that could be possible, right? Since it was adjusted, and also the vibrational frequency of those that were involved in its restoration, I will say, could have influenced it.
Right. Debbie's pointing out something, saying in 1687, an Ottoman, in the final decade of the 6th century AD, the Parthenon was converted into a Christian church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Okay. After the Ottoman conquest, it was turned into a mosque in the early 1460s. Okay, so it's rather confused. In 1687, an Ottoman ammunition dump inside the building was ignited by Venetian bombardment during a siege of the Acropolis. The explosion severely damaged the Parthenon and its sculptures. So possibly something to do with that part of history as well. Michael, any comments on the Parthenon?
Yeah, the Parthenon is a great example how civilizations build on top of each other. It's clearly not a Greek construction or originated by the Greeks. It was already there. The Greeks just inherited it, and they, as you said, they resurrected it from what was previously there, very badly destroyed. And the Parthenon is, it was known as the Mountain of the Gods, right? Or the Mount of the Gods, wherever. Humans weren't allowed to go there. And it's clearly an ancient circuit board. That's one of the examples I often show. When you look at old aerial photographs of the Parthenon, you can still see where the other components of the circuit boards used to be, and that was all removed. It's like completely stripped of all its parts. So
very interesting. Okay, well,
I want to say, actually, it makes sense why the original frequency was 400, because the circuit board, in my mind, if I connect it to the frequency, it would be something from a very analytical perspective, and 400 is a very much analytical frequency. So that absolutely would correspond to what Michael just shared. Yes.
Okay.
And you can also see the amphitheater that I mentioned earlier. Just literally just to the left, there's an amphitheater here, and there was a more modern one built further down. And you can see the row of pillars that connected. There's like an entrance portal. It's like a device that must have been the starting mechanism for the circuit board to make it perform whatever energy it was supposed to create and do whatever this machine was supposed to do in very, very ancient times.
Very interesting. Okay, moving on. We're going to the Siwa Oasis, and I'm very sad that I don't have the photographs that I took there, because I did go there with my beloved friend Shireen about 20 odd years ago, and she took me to meet the Sheikh of Siwa. And so, to give some context to the Siwa Oasis, it's the most recently discovered micro-civilization, I believe, in the world. And the story, as I understand it, was that the returning Italian pilots in the Second World War, when they were leaving North Africa because they were losing to the Allies, they took a shortcut across the desert, the Great White Sahara, and which they shouldn't normally have done. It's too dangerous to do that. But because they were running for their lives, they went straight across the Great White Sahara, as opposed to going and tagging the coastline. And in so doing, in breaking the protocol, the navigation protocol, the pilots looked out and couldn't believe what they saw in the middle of the Great White Sahara. At a given point, they came across this micro-civilization, Siwa Oasis, the most exquisite place you can imagine. I absolutely fell in love when I went there. And that also was the place where Alexander the Great was retreating with his armies, and stopped in at an oracle there. We're going to do the reading of the oracle also at the Temple of the Oracle. But Siwa Oasis, tell us what you can make of this reading of Siwa Oasis.
Yes, Siwa Oasis, as of right now, the frequency is 600, which is the frequency of peace. We also measured the frequency in the 7th century BCE, and the frequency was higher at 700, the frequency of enlightenment.
Very interesting. Okay, well, a bit more background. So the oasis is deep in a deep depression that reaches below sea level, about 20 odd meters. Evidence of Christianity at Siwa is uncertain, but in 708, the Siwans resisted an Islamic army and probably did not convert until the 12th century. A local manuscript mentions only 7 families totaling 40 men living at the oasis in the 13th century. It was also the site of some fighting during World War I and World War II. The British Army's long-range desert group ended up being based there, but Rommel's Africa Corps also took possession 3 times. The traditional culture of Siwa shows many unique elements. I can tell you one of them because it was extraordinary. They bury people up to the neck in sand. If you're sick, doesn't matter what it is, influenza or cancer. Their common curative is to bury people and then cover them in palm fronds and feed them tamarind and water in different ratios. And the earth sucks now. Now we know, advanced naturopathy. We now know that if you do something like that, the telluric forces, you draw all of the shit out of the body. It's like a monstrous detox, an epic detox. But that's the way that the people of Siwa do it. It gets a bit more weird. After they've taken you out from being buried alive, just with your head sticking up, and you can be there for days or I believe even a week or 2. When they pull you out, depending on your condition, the medicine man comes to you and pulls the devil out by your right toe. And then as they pull the devil out from your right toe, there is a uniform phenomenon that occurs, which is that the subject then starts vomiting. And what comes out is little chunks of metal and weird detritus. And I'm wondering if that's some earthen way of baking the heavy metals, detoxing internally in some bizarre way, and then expelling or excreting the toxins in that way. But nonetheless, I've planned for many years to go back and study that, and I'm still intending to do that. I want to go and study that in Siwa and understand the rudiments of that. But tell us about Michael. Any comments on Siwa Oasis?
I don't really have much to say about that, other than it's possibly a part of what used to be the largest lake on Earth, as large as all the Great Lakes in America together, North America together. Lake Chad, I think it was called. That's what they call it. And that lake would have existed as recently as 5,000 years ago. That's some of the most recent discoveries. And the whole of the Sahara area was a huge, lush forest with this huge lake in the center of it. And that is now known as the largest desert on Earth. So whatever happened there is highly suspicious and needs to be looked at a lot more. I have some very interesting ideas what I think happened there based on my research on ancient civilizations and the quest for gold mining. Keep in mind that Egypt was, after all, a gold mining empire, a golden empire as well, just like the empires south of Egypt in southern Africa were also golden empires along the Nilotic meridian. And I suspect that the whole of the Sahara has a very different history to what anybody could imagine. And we're just looking at some of the very weird and mysterious remains of what was a very different environment as recently as 5,000 years ago.
So 2,700 years ago, thereabouts, you did readings, Alejandro and Elena. And so, yeah, take us into that.
Now we're looking into the Temple of the Oracle.
No, sorry, did we already do these readings?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that just to remind us, 700 at inception, and 600 is a frequency today, which is a high frequency,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's a laudable frequency, taking us to the Oracle, which is the Holy of Holies inside it. And there you have the numbers.
Yes, the Temple of the Oracle vibrates at the frequency of 700 now. Then we measured it in 1385 BC, and it vibrated at 800.
Wow.
Both are in the Enlightenment
Right.
stage, right?
Okay, so backstory, it's believed that that's where Alexander the Great was declared the son of Amun in that temple. I've been there. I've sat there at sunset, and it's exquisite. There are many stories about the foundation of the temple. One tells of two priestesses who were banished from Thebes to the desert. One founded the temple of Dodona in Greece, the other the temple of the Oracle in Agurmi, which is Siwa. One of the most revered oracles in the ancient Mediterranean. Its power was such that some rulers sought its advice while others sent armies to destroy it. Although treasure hunters have been at work at Siwa and the buttress temple was poorly restored in the 70s, it remains an evocative site steeped in history, surrounded by the ruins of Agurmi. It has awesome views over the Siwan oasis palm drops, I can testify. And when you sit there, you cannot but see Alexander the Great and his fucking great army. You know, you could just picture it because the backdrop is as it was at that time, quite exquisite. Let's move on to another phallic symbol. Good God, where is this taking us? Alejandro, Elena, the Stone of Tara in Ireland, the Holy of Holies.
Yes, the Stone of Tara is 400 frequency. So as of today, again, we did not have a date to measure it back to its original, when it was originally erected. So as of today, it's 400 frequency of reason.
Okay, very interesting. So the Hill of Tara is an ancient ceremonial burial site near unpronounceable in County Meath, Ireland. Tara consists of numerous monuments and earthworks from the Neolithic to the Iron Age. And I'll tell you what I know of it. And it's Veronica Keane, the clairvoyant, psychic, mystic, remarkable woman, wonderful woman, and a dear friend of mine, and the widow of the very famous Montague Keane, who was a very, very famous mystic and clairvoyant and medium. Montague famously died on stage in the middle of a speech with Rupert Sheldrake, I believe, and others in the audience. A lot of hallowed scholars were there. I laugh because it's a beautiful story and because I've shared this with Veronica, his wife. And he died giving his dissertation. And collapsed, bodies taken to be resuscitated and what have you, and he's passed on. But his spirit moves directly into Veronica, and she continues basically his dissertation, and then continued his life's work up till the present day. And she's in well into her 80s now, a remarkable, adroit woman and a dear friend. But she's taught me a great deal about the Stone of Tara. And according to her understanding, and hers is a formidable comprehension of Ireland and of this totem that we're looking at, that this is in a sense, the Shiva or the lingam of the earth that must move into phase conjugation with the Shakti, which is the Ark of the Covenant, so to speak, that needs to go into phase coherence with this stone in order to reconvene the activating of the noosphere and the dispelling of the fallen light of Atlantis. And it's an incredible story, but and I'm very involved in something connected to that with Veronica Keane that at some point we'll make public. But Michael, any comments on the Stone of Tara?
Maybe I should get Emma to come and pronounce that name, that unpronounceable name that you brought up. She speaks Irish. with the original Irish language. But the story of Ireland is one of the great mysteries of ancient civilizations, one of the great hidden parts of human history. Unquestionably, there's been a desperate attempt to hide ancient history that I think then moves into what we could call modern history or more recent history, and Ireland seems to be that melting pot right there. It's one of the most misunderstood places on earth and one of the most confusing places on earth at the same time.
Right. I can't resist doing this to you, Michael. You're going to have to forgive me. I have to do it. All right.
Okay.
I apologize. You owe me one. Let's move on. Mexico was a large pre-Columbian city built by the Maya people of the terminal Classic period. The archaeological site is located in the Tino municipality. Why would I want to read that out to people, Deborah? She's my researcher. Okay, no one cares about municipalities, for God's sake. Chichen Itza was a major focal point in the northern Maya lowlands from AD 600 to 900, blah, blah, blah. The Maya name Chichen Itza means at the mouth of the well of the Itza, which doesn't tell us anything about what it means. What does Itza mean? This derives from chi, meaning mouth or edge. The city may have had the most diverse population in the Mayan world, a factor that could have contributed to the variety of architectural style at this site. I've been there. I've spent intense time there, intense. I was there actually at 2012, the 21st of December 2012, with the Mayan Council. Greg Braden and a lot of notables were there doing ceremony as well on that incredibly fateful, in a positive sense, fateful day, the end of the long count Mayan Tzolk'in. And we had an extraordinary experience there, which I won't go into here. But for me, it holds a very special place. I was very happy when you did the readings on this and claimed that it was a 700. It was enlightened at its inception. But please speak to this.
Yes. The overall vibrational frequency now is 400, which is the level of reason, intellect. And in 1300 CE was 700, the level of enlightenment. Mm-hmm.
Can you give us any context for why those numbers might be arrived at?
I mean, if I may, actually have an idea, because a lot of these ancient temples, ancient pyramids that we see are at a very different vibration than historically going back. So whatever they were emitting frequency-wise and whatever they were used for back then has absolutely shifted. So perhaps they're no longer used. These sites are no longer used as circuit boards, as Michael said, as they were used probably thousands of years ago.
Very interesting. Michael, any comments?
Yeah, it's a very, very important point to make. The interesting thing that just came to me as you were talking, and you reminded me of Chichen Itza, because I studied it many years ago as when I discovered the whole circuit board phenomenon, which blew my mind, as you can imagine. Yeah. I think I was at in 2012 when you and I met, Sacha, in Hilversum. That's when I first presented the circuit board thing at the Breakthrough Energy Conference. And then I studied, what I find is that all these ancient sites that generate the energy, they beam the energy up into the sky. And then there seems to be like this energetic grid that is formed that covers an entire area above these structures. The stone circles are a great example. And I know this from having measured this in various ways. And what the stone circles have a completely different purpose altogether. But it just came to me now as I was listening to what you're saying, and this is the first time I've actually had this thought. So this is very exciting for me as well. It's an aha moment for me. Is because many of these structures like Chichen Itza and that whole complex is not a huge complex that covers the whole continent like the stone circles of Southern Africa. Yeah. These were more constricted. They had boundaries. It was like a giant city. And I'm thinking that they built these structures with a knowledge of using the Earth frequencies to amplify, generate the energies, to beam it up into the sky and create this energetic grid above their city where they lived. And that energetic grid would then create the confinement area that they could control and manipulate. They can control and manipulate the weather, the rain, all these kind of things with the structures that they created as part of their city layout. That's just an idea that just came to me.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Mount Shasta. I'm not going to go into this. It's a controversial location. It's technically not a monument, but it's a sacred site of sorts. And certainly there's a lot of extraterrestrial activity. Michael, James Gilliland has his ranch there, and there's a hell of a lot of sort of UFO activity connected to it. It's purportedly an inner Earth portal. What do you make of the frequency readings?
Yeah, the overall frequency is 350, which is the frequency of acceptance. Now, we didn't measure back to thousands of years prior to, because it's a mountain. So we weren't sure how far back to go to measure it if the frequency was any different. But perhaps it's something that's worth exploring. As of today, it's 350.
Michael, what dateline should they be looking at with Mount Shasta, more or less?
Now we get to that fascinating question. Was it a pile of sand that remained from gold mining, and then it turned to stone because of lightning and electric activity? Because that's what happens when you add water and electricity to a pile of sand like that, it turns to stone. It's really that simple. So with all the stuff that, the plants and other things around it. So I have no idea how far back they should go. I just want to say that Mount Shasta is one of the great mounts up there in that part of the United States. Mount Adams and Mount Rainier are further north of that. And James Gilliland's ranch is right there at Mount Adams. He's a few kilometers from Mount Adams. When you come out and overlooking his field, you look out at Mount Adams. And so it's part of the same weird ancient activity. And there's been some very interesting research done by some people that suggest that these may be the remains of ancient gold mines. And because of what happened there and the gold mining or the mining that happened there, then eventually they either became volcanic activity, or it seems like a volcanic activity. It's interesting, very interesting place.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Eiffel Tower, a wrought iron lattice tower on the Champ de Mars in Paris, France, named after the engineer Gustave Eiffel. Sounds like a good Freemasonic name to me. Whose company designed and built the tower. It was constructed from 1887 to 1889 as the entrance to the 1880 World Fair to celebrate the centennial of the French Revolution. The tower is 324 meters tall, about the same height as an 81-story building. Wow. And the tallest structure in Paris still. The Eiffel Tower surpassed the Washington Monument to become the tallest man-made structure in the world, a title it held for 41 years until the Chrysler Building in New York was finished in 1930. Due to the addition of a broadcasting aerial at the top of the tower in 1957, it is now taller than the Chrysler Building by 5.2 meters. God, talk about penis envy. Excluding transmitters, the Eiffel Tower is the second tallest freestanding structure in France after the Millau Viaducts. Well, I happen to know, and I can't go into it here, it would require 2 hours, but I happen to know that the Eiffel Tower is an effigy, which you could more describe as the cock of Baal than anything else. It is anchoring the marriage point of the dielectric universe and the telluric forces of the earth on a particular intersection or a ley line intersection, which at that precise point, directly underneath the Eiffel Tower in the epicenter, is the central part of the entanglement of those portals, so to speak, or those ley lines, trajectories. And that is anchoring, in a sense, it's anchoring intention. It's exactly what Michael speaks about and has done a lot to reveal with ancient monuments. But I've been involved for over a decade with physicists and mediums and ayahuasca masters and all sorts of different weird and wonderful people with weird and wonderful skills, put it that way, in determining that this Eiffel Tower is the epicenter, in a sense, of anchoring the Luciferic energetic into the heartland of the whole of Europe, and not just Europe, actually the world. If you create a dodecahedron mapping system and you put a wireframe and you put it over the earth, the epicenter is exactly where the Eiffel Tower is. Michael, any comments before we throw the stick to Elena and Alejandro?
Yeah, I think you said it all. I don't think I need to add anything more to that. It's very obvious what's going on here. But the interesting thing about this is, I just want to throw in here, is this was it was part of the Paris, or the European Convention that it was built for, right? This expo that was built very, very close to the expo in, was it in the expo in Chicago in 1882 as well, the World Expo that they built all these incredible structures for, and just the most mind-blowing structures, and then they destroyed it all after the expo. And the question here is
all witchery, black magic, witchery and black magic, and these were Masonic, Luciferic undertakings. They were conducting ritual magic in plain sight in different parts of the world under the guise of grand exhibitions. That certainly is my take on it. But Elena, Alejandro, what's your reading on this?
Yes, the overall vibrational frequency is 200, and it was 200 in 1887 as well, which is the level of courage. And it could be that was placed, without a doubt, it was strategically placed. In this case, at the frequency of 200, perhaps the intention was to, besides celebrating the French Revolution, it was more than likely could be to keep the vibrational frequency of the collective at that level, right?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Right now, the vibrational frequency of the collective, human collective, is at 230, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Very interesting. Well, let's move straight on to the next one, which is the Statue of Liberty, copper statue, a gift from the people of France to the people of the United States, designed by the French sculptor Auguste Bartholdi. Its metal framework built by Gustave Eiffel, the same engineer of Eiffel Tower. The statue was dedicated in 1886. The statue is a figure of Libertas, a robed Roman liberty goddess. Believe that, if you will. She holds a torch above her head with her right hand. In her left hand carries a tabula ansata inscribed July 4, 1776 in, was it Roman numerals, the date of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. After dedication, the statue became an icon of freedom and the U.S. seen as a symbol of welcome to the immigrant arriving by sea.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the overall frequency is 55, but actually there is a mistake on the slide because the frequency in 1886 was also 55, which is a frequency of manipulation.
And it came to me, I wonder what the frequency of the Trojan horse was. We didn't read that yet, but
oh, that would be an interesting one to read as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, almost certainly a Trojan horse in that sense. I mean, reading 50. Now, okay, 200, same as Eiffel, right?
No, it is 55 right now, and it was
55.
In 1886, 55.
Yeah, there's a mistake on the slide. It was actually 55 from the very beginning.
Which
for the Statue of Liberty.
The Statue of Liberty.
Okay, 55. Gotcha. Okay, doke. Well, let's move on to Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem.
Yes.
Islamic shrine located in, well, I don't need to say, this is the Holy of Holies. Okay, this is the Holy of Holies. And personally, I was delighted to read this this number. Its architecture and mosaics patterned after the nearby Byzantine churches and palaces. The outside appearance significantly changed in the Ottoman period and again in the modern period, notably with the addition of the gold-plated roof. The foundation stone the temple was built over bears great significance in the Abrahamic religions as the place where God created the world and the first human, the Adam. So give us your reading.
Yes, its overall vibrational frequency is 700. And in 1023 was always 700 as well. And this is very few actually maintain their original frequency. Like this particular case is very special, I think.
Well, I think that's going to be very interesting for all devotees who revere that. Now, this is the Kaaba in Mecca, containing an asteroid, a meteorite, a stone, used to contain a lot of different effigies and totems that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, went in and sacked the Kaaba nearly 2,000 years ago, went in and trashed it and broke up the idols, trying to remind the good people of the world not to be idolaters, instead to unify their faith to one God. So now today, of course, it's the pinnacle of Islam. Everyone in the Muslim world says their prayers in the direction of Mecca. It is the Holy of Holies to the Islamic brothers and sisters of the world. What do you make of the reading there?
Yes, its overall vibrational frequency is 400, the level of reason, intellect. And in 608 CE was 700, the enlightenment.
Okay, interesting. Let's move on to Georgia Guidestones.
Overall vibrational frequency 100, the level of fear. And in 1980, also 100, level of fear.
So it was conceived with that in mind. There's another image of the Georgia Guidestones. And the most important image I could show you folks is this one. What does it say on the Georgia Guidestones? Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. That sounds like the Ubermensch. Sounds like Dr. Mengelé's eugenics program to me. Unite humanity with a living new language. And so it goes on. I mean, it is an absolute abomination. I'll quickly give you the run through. One, these are the guidestones say. One, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance of nature. Two, guide reproduction wisely. Three, unite humanity with a living new language. Four, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. That's really probably an attack on the human orgasm, the way I read it. Number five, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Six, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Sounds like central command and control to me. Seven, avoid petty laws and useless officials. Well, I think we could put that to the top of the list. Eight, balance personal rights with social duties. But then again, if you go back to number seven, once you've culled 7 billion human beings from the face of the earth, you don't have much need for all of those tens of millions of statutes and ordinances and codes, do you? Especially when you transhumanize them with glyphosates and aluminum and God knows what else they're pumping into our bodies. Eight, balance personal rights with social duties. Oh yeah, sounds like the Chinese social credits scheme underway there. Nine, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Number 10, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. You see, that's the kind of script they give to us when they are about to do another monstrous land grab, and they've done that in the past a number of times. Michael, your comments on the Georgia Guidestones. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Michael.
We're definitely going through one of the phases and events where the depopulation of our planet is being activated now. It's very clear and obvious to anyone who's paying attention to what's going on. with this disease that's been unleashed on humanity, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what to call it, because no matter what you say about this pandemic, plandemic, virus, whatever you call it, there's always somebody who jumps up and has a, but what about this? What about that? So it's just so much chaos, and it's caused so much division in humanity, and they have the master plan, and that's what it is, right? You create the problem, reaction, and deliver the solution, and that's what's happening right now. So the Georgia Guidestones are referring to the times that we live in right now.
Indeed, perfectly stated. All right, let's move on to my country, where I was born and grew up. I don't know why these bloody slides are not coming up. There we go. Zimbabwe ruins. What do you make of that reading, Alejandro and Elena? Let me remove Michael and put you there. Boom.
Yeah, Zimbabwe ruins. Overall frequency as of today, 225, which is the frequency of courage. And we measured it during the 1st century AD. The frequency was 600. Peace.
Okay, Michael, very briefly, a very brief comment on Zimbabwe ruins. If I've been there, extraordinary place. Have you been there?
I've been there many times. We do our sacred sites tours to Great Zimbabwe is one of the main places we go to. So the last time I was there was exactly a year ago. We were at Great Zimbabwe, just before the lockdown. We were there. So it is an extraordinary place. And all I can say is that it's one of the places of great misunderstanding, misinterpretation. And it's a great example of the technology of the ancients, and also hosts or boasts the largest conical tower that is still, or conical, a cone-shaped tool that you may know. I discovered the importance of cone-shaped tools here among the ruins of Southern Africa. And inside of Great Zimbabwe is a very large cone-shaped tool facing the sky. It's just a different version of a pyramid or an obelisk or any such device that focuses energy into the sky. So it's a spectacular place.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's move on to the Colosseum. Boom. Give us your readings there.
Its overall vibrational frequency now 75, which is the level of grief. And in 70 AD was 50, the level of apathy, manipulation. Mm-hmm.
And gruesome circuses, bread and circuses for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very interesting indeed. Have you been there, Michael?
Yes, Colosseum. What can I say? It's Roman era. I don't think personally, I don't believe that the Colosseum has any more significance than that. I might be wrong. I'm always open to new information, but at this stage, I don't think it's much more than that. Just oppression and control.
Very good. Okay, let's look at the Dalai Lama's home, home of the Tibetans, the Potala Palace, Lhasa, Tibet, built in 1645. What do you make of the readings there, Alejandro, Elena?
Yes, its overall vibrational frequency now 400, and in 1645 was also 400, the level of reason, intellect.
Interesting that it's all mind, very much mind, but not really embodying the enlightenment frequency.
Right.
Well, you're looking right there at a CIA asset. God bless him. I mean, let's not pretend that 7 years in Tibet and all of that stuff was really anything other than a political exercise. And it's very, very complex internecine politics going on anyway between Tibet and China. And then you bring the America into the equation and the West into the equation, and only a handful of people understand that agenda. It's not a pretty one, but it's curious that the frequency remained, throughout.
Perfect example when we attach to knowledge and intellect, and not allow divine intelligence to flow or pay attention to divine intelligence.
Right. Has Michael dropped off by mistake? Okay, until he comes back in, let's just move on to, we're coming to the end. The Forbidden City.
The Forbidden City. As of today, the frequency is 110, which is the frequency of fear. And originally in 1420, the frequency of the Forbidden City was 400. Reason, intellect, again.
Okay. Okay. So I got some images of what do you see in the Forbidden City? Well, that's the entrance to the compound of the emperor. And I believe this is on the inside. Where are we? Boom. There we go. Best I could get. But interesting. So 400 to 110. I mean, all of the compromising and all that's happened in China, the takedown of the old imperial dynasties. I think Michael's just coming back and joining us, or trying to. Let's see, is he there? Give him a moment in South Africa to get online. Yeah, any further commentary on the Forbidden City? I'll just read a bit of background. Constructed between 1406 to 1420, it's a rectangle measuring 961 meters from the north to south. That's almost 1 kilometer, and 753 meters from the east to west. Consists of 980 surviving buildings with 8,886 bays of rooms. Wow. A common myth states that there are 9,999 rooms. You're back in with us, Michael. Welcome. We're just going through the Forbidden City. It was the former Chinese imperial palace and winter residence of the Emperor of China from the Ming dynasty to the end of the Qing or Qing dynasty. Served as the home of Chinese emperors and their households, as the ceremonial and political center of the Chinese government for almost half a millennium. 500 years. The Forbidden City was also known as the Palace City, after being the home of 24 emperors, 14 of the Ming dynasty and 10 of the Qing dynasty. The Forbidden City seized the political center of China in 1912 with the abdication of Pui, the last emperor of China, under an agreement with the new Republic of China government, courtesy of Wall Street, the Vatican, and the Crown of England, because that is how communism, social Nazism toppled Europe, parts of Europe, and Russia, and of course China franchised there. But nonetheless, what do you make of the readings?
Well, it doesn't have to be forbidden anymore, since that will take from being prohibited from visiting it, and it's not aligned with us, so we're not even going to contemplate that idea. But yes, the level of fear is what that is the predominant emotion around it now.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Has Michael joined us? I think we're having difficulties getting. He's with us. Can you hear us, Michael?
Electricity blinked out.
His electricity blinked out. Okay, that's a very African thing. Look, let's move on to Wadi Al Natrun, a place I'm deeply in love with. So I've also got a special dispensation and got in there with a diplomatic pass, a diplomatic car with my beloved friend, the former ambassador of the Czech Republic, Dana Hunatova, who took me there many, many years ago. From Egypt, we drove there through the desert of Sketis, driving at breakneck speed in her diplomatic car. I was absolutely shitting myself, terrified. By the time we got there, we were greeted by the monks. That's the ambassador in the middle, and my dear friend Peter Georgeson, myself there, looking like something that was thrown out of a band in the 1990s. And the two bishops met us there. I was particularly in love with this one here. I mean, just look at him. He's so rock and roll, honestly. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the bishop. Anyway, that was an awful long time ago. But I did get into the desert of Sketis to meet with them and spend some time with them there. No one at that time could get in there. It was under military. You couldn't even get into that quadrant of the desert. Nonetheless, I've got stories to tell, which one day I'm going to tell. I was taken underground there and saw some extraordinary things underground. But what do you make of the numbers? I almost shed a tear when I got the numbers, and I'm so grateful that you read them. Because for me, there is something remarkably special about the place and the handful of bishops who are still anchoring the place now. Having said that, don't forget, it's under the Coptics. This is the Coptics. This is the Coptics' Holy of Holies. And the Coptics are a confluence of the Muslims and the Christians. So they are the sort of where the two monotheistic religions meet. And those monks, these extraordinary guys in this remarkable little oasis, whenever there was a war going on, they would disappear underground for months at a time. They've got underground caverns and things and air vents and underground springs, and they keep their grain there and their livestock. And they're, so they were able to literally retreat when battles were raging above. They would literally go underground like rabbits, seal up the boulders, and they would stay there until the storm had passed, and then they would surface again. But it was the Coptic bishops who turned over the Dead Sea Scrolls to us years ago. So they've got things underground that they're still dispensing from time to time. In any event, what do you make of the reading of the Wadi al-Natrun, the monastery?
Yes, as of today, the overall frequency is 200, the frequency of courage. And then when we look back to the 1st century AD, the frequency was 800, the frequency of enlightenment.
So where's the distinction between 700 and 800? Because we've seen some 700s today.
I mean, the enlightenment frequency begins at 700 and it goes to 1000 for the human experience. So 700, 800 is just the amount of resistance from, if we're looking into 1000. So 800 to 1000, there's less resistance.
Understood. Very good. Thank you. Well, I'm thrilled to see that. I'm saddened that it's gone to 200 from 800. I'm not surprised. Like I said, it's a prize. The Coptics and what they have, the knowledge that they've been keeping for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. There's a lot of military activity around them. They've been kind of, in a sense, in a lockdown for a long time by the Egyptian military. So possibly that's where that frequency plummeted. Let's move on to, actually, I believe we've got, yes, we're on now the tour we need Michael back. Get him back on because we're about to do him. This is why we brought him on the show. Let's do Göbekli quickly. Göbekli in Turkey, also known as unpronounceable, is an archaeological site in Anatolia. The mound is a height of 15 meters. It includes 2 phases of use, believed to be one of social and ritual nature by site discoverer and excavator Klaus Schmidt, dating back to the 10th and 18th millennium BCE. Okay. A circle of massive T-shaped stone pillars were erected. The world's oldest known megaliths are in there. Each pillar has a height of up to 6 meters, 20 feet, and weighs up to 10 tons. They are fitted into sockets that were hewn out of the local bedrock in the second phase, belonging to the pre-pottery Neolithic. The erected pillars are smaller and stood in rectangular rooms with floors of polished lime. So it goes on. An interesting place, still an archaeological site, and tremendous revelations coming from there. Don't expect to hear them anytime soon, friends, because your friendly government and military get there before anyone else. And then they steal the goodies, and they get their Masonic buddies and Bilderberger buddies to decide what information can be spat in our face and what information they keep in the Vatican, the British Library, and Smithsonian and elsewhere. So don't expect that what they really find in these archaeological digs, and Michael is one of the world's experts, could have spoken to this better than me. When you view something like the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a very big archaeological dig, don't believe for one goddamn moment that National Geographic Channel is going to tell you what they find there, okay? Because it's not. And it's really time we all unplugged from that kind of linear nonsense and recognize that governments themselves are controlled by rouge factions, shadow governments, and the shadow governments are contained by the interconnected deep state, and that's contained by Babylonian, Masonic, and Luciferic elements. In any event, give us your take on the incredible readings of Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. Overall vibrational frequency is 600, the level of peace, and 11,000 years ago was 1,000. That is the fully integrated experience.
It's high frequency. It was emitting very high frequency.
Remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, yes.
He's coming in.
Okay, Michael's trying to get back in, and God knows we need the man, because the next we're doing is, there's Michael at Adam's calendar, South Africa. You say he's trying to get on, yeah?
Yeah, the electricity's back on.
Electricity's gone back on in Southern Africa, in the bush where he is. So let's just give him a minute or two to come on. I'll tell you what, we'll pass over Adam's calendar for a moment and quickly go to the Tor in England. There we go. The Tor is a hill near Glastonbury in the English county of Somerset, topped by the roofless St. Michael's Tower. Archaeological excavations during the 20th century sought to clarify the background of the monument and church, but aspects of the history remain unexplained. It is, to many people in the kind of Celtic traditions and the kind of New Age Druidic communities, really regard this as a very important epicenter for their mystical traditions. The second half of the name Berg, of the original name, the Celtic name, is Anglo-Saxon, referring to either a fortified place such as a burh, or more likely a monastic enclosure. But what do you make of the readings?
Yes, the Tor in Glastonbury, England, overall frequency today is 310, which is the frequency of willingness. And the frequency of it, the year 300 BC was 500, love. So definitely the frequency have shifted, as we see in most of the sites that we've been reading today. So whatever the intent, the original intent was, and what is showing up today is definitely slightly different.
Very, very interesting indeed. Okay, let's have a look at the Bosnian pyramid. Move on to that, because that was fairly recently discovered. I don't want to read the background to it because too much to read and I'll lose my voice. But it is one of the most recent pyramids discovered. Look at this. I mean, it's absolutely majestic if you look at it. There we go. So for millennia, that goes uncharted, unnoticed, aka disguised under canopy of forest and whatever. I mean, look at that incredible vista. And then enough folks get wound up by the fact that they know that it's hiding something. And I can't remember the name of the remarkable gentleman who's led the excavations. Oh, Osmanagic. He claims that the direction of the hills reveals alignment to support ancient human cosmology. According to a surveyor from Sarajevo's Geodetic Institute, the Pyramid of the Sun, as they call it, is perfectly oriented to the north. The excavator, Osmanagic, has said that the sides of the pyramid are oriented toward the cardinal points, and claims this could not be produced by natural process. His claims also center on alleged evidence concerning satellite photography, thermal analysis, and radar detection. So let me tell you what's really going on here with the Bosnian pyramid. The government and military interests are prohibiting any formal disclosure. That's what's going on. Technically, they're still calling it a mountain because obviously it is a huge epochal excavation, and what lies beneath, whether it's UFOs, hyperdimensional, interdimensional alien craft, and I'm being quite serious when I say that. I know enough about the subject to know what has been discovered in different parts of the world. We don't know, but don't expect your friendly Bosnian government and Wikipedia to let you know anytime soon. But for any serious researchers out there, take a look. The interesting thing, of course, guys, is your reading. What do you make of it?
Yes, the overall frequency today of the Bosnian pyramids is 310, willingness. And 30,000 years ago, the measurement of the intent, right, with which it was placed and the frequency it was emitting was the frequency of 900. So again, I think it goes back to what Michael also shared, that it was part of these circuit boards that were emitting certain frequencies, whether it was to control environment, atmosphere, some kind of frequency transmitter, for sure, high frequency transmitter.
The point here being that with a frequency reading of 900, at its genesis point, a benevolent intelligence.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just to sustain balance overall, right, within that region, I guess.
Right. Okay, let's move on to, and guys, we're coming to the end of the show. Just so you know, we've got 2 more readings. Stay with us till then. Baalbek ruins in Lebanon, incredibly beautiful. A city located in the Litani River in Lebanon Valley, Bekaa Valley. It is home to the Baalbek temple complex, including 2 of the largest, grandest Roman temple ruins, the Temple of Bacchus and the Temple of Jupiter. After Alexander the Great's conquest of Persia in the 330s BC, Baalbek formed part of the Diadochi kingdoms of Egypt and Syria. It was annexed by the Romans during their Eastern wars. Baalbek shows signs of continual habitation over the last over the last 8,000 to 9,000 years. And during the Canaanite period, the local temples were largely devoted to the Heliopolitan triad, a male god, which is Baal. Okay, so that's interesting. His consort Astarte and their son Adon. In Islamic mythology, the temple complex was said to be a palace of Solomon's, which is put together by a jinn, kind of a demonic sprite energy, and given as a wedding gift to the Queen of Sheba. Its actual Roman origin remained obscured by the citadel's medieval fortifications as late as the 16th century. And Baalbek was occupied by the Muslim army in AD 634. Wars raged until it was seized in 1246 after a year of assault by Asali Ayub, who bestowed it upon unpronounceable name when another unpronounceable successor from an unpronounceable place was murdered in 1250. The Sultan of Aleppo seized Damascus and demanded Baalbek's surrender. Instead, its emir did homage. Way too long, Debbie. Way too long. Sorry, guys. I'm dwindling. So just give us your reading.
Yes, its overall vibrational frequency now is 400, the level of reason, intellect. And in 9,000 BC was 900, the level of enlightenment. No?
Okay, which is, again, we're seeing a benevolent intelligence at work. I mean, that's my reading. This is, I think, very telling, especially when we're talking about Baal and the understanding of Baal and Molochite worship and Baal worship and sacrifice of innocence. Maybe we've got a whole bunch of stuff wrong or upside down there. But so this is to the audience. What I think what's remarkable here is that it seems to me that we're really maybe finding a different energetic context to some of these monuments and effigies and totems and sacred sites. Some that I would have thought were steeped in wickedness and evil and a kind of dark or low frequency are the polar opposite. I'm going away from this really knowing less than I knew. But knowing a whole lot more where it matters, which is energetics, frequency. Mm-hmm. But I'm having to really upturn some of my contextual framework, which I love, incidentally. I'm born for that. But wow, fantastic readings. Thank you for that. Any further comments?
You're welcome. No, I think you've said it beautifully.
Great. Okay, let's move on to, I'll just show you, I think I've got some, oh yeah, this is one of the incredible stones. Look at this. Look at those people on it. Just extraordinary. And again, this is all part of a kind of ongoing archaeological digs. Mm-hmm. All right, taking us to our very last slide today, which is Easter Island. What do you make of that?
Yes, we measured two things. Easter Island itself, which is a frequency of 600, frequency of peace. And then we measured those monolithic sculptures. They're called moai. And the frequency of those is 700, frequency of enlightenment.
Okay. Wow. Big wow. Now I'm going to suggest that I don't want us to do Adam's calendar, because I think that when we do part 2, Michael will join us. And we'll let him open with that and maybe get some special disclosures for our audience. We've got 1,700 near enough people still with us. Thanks for staying with us, folks. A quick run through the numbers. I need the full list on your computer of all the readings from today in front of me. I've got the first lot that was sent through, but not the latest half a dozen. So highest frequency reading that you guys have done today was 1,000 for the Saqqara pyramid in Egypt, right? That gets the price.
Original frequency when it was constructed.
And also for Gobekli Tepe,
Yes.
originally at 1,000, yes.
Yes.
And then we have the Bosnian pyramid, originally at 900, and the Baalbek ruins in Lebanon, originally at 900 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the lowest readings, what are we talking? We're talking
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, and Colosseum in Rome.
Colosseum in Rome.
Mhm.
Yes.
And the game stones, I believe. In
Georgia.
Georgia.
Guide stones, 100. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Statue of Liberty. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty, low, Georgia guide stones.
Washington Monument at Fear. Mm-hmm.
Washington Monument, right.
Eiffel Tower at 200.
Eiffel Tower at 200.
Stonehenge at 110 today when it was 700 frequency 3000 the year 3000 BC.
So remarkable. I mean, that is one of the most remarkable things, isn't it? And I wonder if that's got to do with the fact that they've moved the stones.
It is possible, yes. And then the Forbidden City in China at 110.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Guys, thank you. This has been very, very interesting as far as I'm concerned. Let's just give audience, I know it's been 2 hours and we're going to just peel off in 2 minutes, but let's quick look at the audience. Guys, let us know what sacred sites or ancient monuments you're interested in. These were chosen by really myself and Debbie. And here's the production room. Yeah, this is what we do when we don't get paid to do it. Okay, it's a makeshift international broadcasting studio. Okay, we've done our best technically. I hope we didn't fluff too much, and I hope you enjoyed the film at the front end of it. Again, check out sashastone.com. I'll have that film uploaded probably later tonight. Mind you, what am I saying? It's early hours of the morning here. We're absolutely knackered. But thoroughly enjoyed this, Alejandro and Elena, and I'm grateful that Michael Tellinger at very short notice joined us, and we'll definitely get him back on again. Are you guys good to do another part 2 of this? Because I know there's so much feedback we've got to get through now. Are we good to do that?
Yes.
Yes, it will be amazing for Michael actually to connect the dots and and give us a list that we can read and
Okay.
what is actually happening nowadays, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just sent through a message from Southern Africa. Huge storm has knocked out the signal, waiting for this to end. Apologies. So he couldn't get back on. He'll definitely be with us in 2 weeks' time when we pick up. Guys, all of you who've stayed for the duration, thank you for this. And please do keep feeding back to us or to me so that we can have a look at what you want read. And we're going to make our way through the thousands of comments that have come through tonight and try and cherry pick some ideas from there as well. Alejandro, Elena, love you guys madly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
All right.